we have to do presentations first because the communications require a vote, and therefore we do not have a quorum.
Good point, Mr. Johnson. So our first presentation will be from the Department of Aviation. This is not an aviation quarterly report. I've asked aviation to give some thoughts on kind of the future of airports and how they're thinking about the coming years alongside what the rest of the world is thinking. These types of presentations will continue into next year, not from aviation, but from other experts and sources around a host of trends and macro forces that are shaping how we think about mobility, whether at the airport or on our city streets. So thank you, General Manager Bayadari. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, good morning, City Council Member, B.B. Adari, Airport General Manager. But before I start my presentation, I would like a brief opening comment. And that is, as our airport continues to recover from this pandemic, we will close a very, very successful year. We'll complete the year moving approximately 93 million passengers, connecting those passengers to people, cultures, and economies of the world. We will complete approximately 750,000 flight operations this year. We will handle approximately 662,000 metric tons of cargo. And the airline, very importantly, added 13 international destinations in calendar year 2022. At the end of this year, we would have opened $628 million worth of completed projects. And we would have completed an estimated $620 million of construction work this year. I must note that $620 million is the highest in the history of this airport. The highest amount of construction work we have done was during the 1999 master plan, approximately $550 million. We do all of this because of what? Because of the stewardship of Mayor Dickens and his administration. I personally want to thank Mayor Dickens for his leadership, his support, and his transparency in governance for us to be able to do what we're doing out there at the airport. The leadership and collective support of this body, Mr. Chair, and this Transportation Committee, Councilmember Juan, and the Finance and Executive Committee, and the entire City Council. We want to thank you for your leadership, your support, and also your transparency in aiding us and helping us to do what we do so well, and that is to run a very efficient airport on the globe. Also, importantly, our strategic vision of one team at the airport, meaning all of us moving the airport in the same direction. If we pull against each other, we will never get to the final destination. So we're moving in the same direction to ensure that the economic vitality of this region is intact. And I will tell you, I have some of my team members here, along with all of our stakeholders. They're the best in the industry. So my heartfelt thanks to all of you. Looking ahead in 2023, what is ahead of us? I think as the labor market continues to improve, we will continue the strong recovery that we have experienced in 2022. Now, this presentation is a very, very high-level presentation. We gathered data from a number of sources out there in preparation for this presentation. And everything I'm about to tell you today may change tomorrow based on the world's condition, whether it's an economic condition or political condition or some other factors out there. So first of all, for us at the airport to plan for the future, we have to understand what's going on in the world in terms of its population, right? And so we see that today the world's population is approximately 7.8 billion people living on this world and on the globe. By all indication, that population will continue to grow to about 9.1 billion by the year 2040. And you can see the biggest growth will be in the continent of Africa. And, you know, when we looked at this data here, one of our strategic vision in terms of air service development is concentrating in our two lagging area, and that is Asia and Africa. And hopefully next year I'll bring good news as it pertains to air service and cargo development on the continent of Africa. And we move to the United States. Now we understand the world, what's happening in the United States, and we look at the population growth to about 379 million passengers by the year 2040. But what we're looking at is we're going to also have an aging population by the year 2040, where those 65 and older will have more people 65 and older than we will on the younger generation. Atlanta or the state of Georgia, what are we looking at in the state of Georgia? We have to understand the state of Georgia. We're looking at a 12.8 million population here, and it's very important to understand that Georgia will grow from and this is, all of this again is forecast data, from the 8th most populous state to the 5th most populous state. And we could see that trend already happening in the last couple of years with a number of industries and the growth that is happening in the Metro Atlanta area. So now that we understand the population, let's take a look at what the travel demand will be, what they're asking us for in terms of air travel. In the world, 4.5 billion passenger use air travel as a mode of transportation. We expect that to grow by 6.3 billion in the year 2020. And the sources are listed right under these numbers where we come up with. United States, prior to 2020, we were on the cusp of a trend to hit 1 billion passenger. What we expect by 2040, we will see about 1.3 billion domestic travelers using the air transportation system. What does that mean for Atlanta and Atlanta Airport? We know that in 2019, we were at 110 million passengers, and based on our forecast, we were growing to probably hit 190 million by 2040. And that's why we're developing the airport for capacity growth. However, because of several economic issues, we thought we'd look at, you have the cyclic trend in aviation, right? And one cyclic trend is when we saw a very steep valley was in 2020, when COVID was declared as a pandemic. We dropped to 42 million passenger in 2020, and we're seeing that growth, that rebound occurring again. And we expect we will be at 160 million plus passenger. And this is based on economic condition and other conditions, political conditions today. And so what we are doing is our 2015 master plan that was done 7 years ago, I've asked the team and approved for them to do a total refresh of that master plan, because I need to understand, the team need to understand what are the changing conditions, what is our inventory that we have today, and what do we need to do to prepare the airport for the next 20 years. And so let's look at airport governance. There are a number of different types of governance around the globe, in the United States, but more importantly in Atlanta. Atlanta Airport is owned and operated by the city of Atlanta under the leadership of the mayor. And we must keep that governance in place. It's a municipal-owned airport that grew this airport from a racetrack to become the world's busiest and most important airport. Why tinker with perfection? This is it. And so all our vision, a vision of one, should ensure that Atlanta Airport remains a municipal-owned, governed airport, because we are doing a heck of a job. Now let's look at what airports in the future will look like in terms of development. Asia, especially in India, 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, I was in India and I was speaking to a number of government and airlines and airport officials. India is planning to build 80 new airports in the next 5 years. Think about that. Albeit they're not going to be the size of Atlanta Airport, maybe smaller airport, more regional type airport, like an Augusta Airport or a Savannah Airport. But in China, they're building 10 airports annually, that's yearly, through the year 2035. So big growth, because when you look at those two economies, China and India, they're probably 3 billion in terms of the world population. So the need, and there's this middle class emerging in both nations that is pressing for air service. Middle East is also investing significant amount of money. Saudi Arabia in particular, they're building an entire aerotropolis called NEOM out there. It's billions and billions of dollars worth. Every time I read about NEOM, the dollar figure keeps changing upwards. And then Africa is modernizing their airport, bringing it up to standard to meet the IATA and FAA and TSA certification requirements. In the United States, as of recently, there are no plans for a new airport in the United States, but we have significant plan in place to modernize our existing infrastructure. We have about 550 commercial airports in the United States that I think is going to be more than capable to serve that 1.3 billion population growth by the year 2040. But in order for us to do that, we must continue to invest in the modernization of airports. We, this body here, and future elected officials must have that vision to continue to invest in the modernization of Atlanta Airport in 3 areas. We have an existing airport that we have to continue to modernize in terms of renewal and replacement of an aging infrastructure. We must continue to modernize and build for future capacity. I said we're going from 110 million to 160 million. And last but not least, we must pay attention to the demand of the users of the airport, that is our traveler, and meet the need of what they're asking for. Provide the necessary infrastructure to meet the needs of the traveler, of the traveling public. Atlanta have, and for us to do that, we have a $12 billion capital program, of which this body have approved, and we have completed $2.8 billion of that so far in the last 7 years. So again, thank this body, thank the leadership of our municipal government, our mayors, previous mayor, and now under the leadership of Mayor Dickens and the entire City Council for their support in ensuring that we continue to modernize our airport to meet the future demand into the year 2040. And what are the signature experience of an airport? What does the airport going to look like? We know that the airport will remain customer-centric, right? We know that safety and security is going to be second to none. That's federal mandate that is placed on us. But I talk about an aging population, and there comes this notion of accessibility. We have to have a vision of how we're going to do that. We are seeing the change from a brick and mortar type commerce to more e-commerce, and we're going to see more and more demand for freight services coming in and out of airport. And we must now move forward in our stewardship as it pertains to the environmental, our social responsibility, and our governance. But more and more also airport is looked at and upon as an economic opportunity for the region. And so we're seeing more and more airports, especially overseas, being built as destination airport. For example, in the Middle East, a lot of the Asian population travel to the Middle East as a destination airport to shop and dine and then head back home. So here is an example of Singapore Airport that is being built as a destination airport, also as a hub for e-commerce and the movement of goods and services to the airport. But more and more airports are looking at being destinations airport. We in Atlanta here have a vision that we have about 65% of our passengers connecting through this airport. How do we get a percentage of those passengers to come back to this airport and use Atlanta as a destination to spend some time in Atlanta and enjoy all the beauty of our city? Infrastructure requirement. We're looking at intermodal connectivity. Atlanta is fortunate that we have a heavy rail coming into the airport. You know, there's some relief of traffic congestion, but more and more airports are starting to look at how do we get people off the road and get them to the airport efficiently. And there's a
You've got
number
feedback somehow.
of elements that are being
Flip
discussed
switch.
out there, a number
Another
of
one.
options in terms of transportation. It's too early to discuss some of those, but in the future, in coming years, you will hear more and more about it. Digitization and biometrics are very important as we continue to evolve in that area. And then the future fleet mix of airport. Are we going to do space travel? Are we going to do vertical travel? Are we moving away from small regional aircraft to larger size aircraft? And if you look at this notion of Airiotropolis, and Atlanta is on the leading edge domestically in our Airiotropolis. You know, this is an example of Schiphol in Amsterdam. They have a very robust, and we're learning from them. We're taking their experience, lessons learned, and we're applying it to ourselves here. And as you could see, there's an entire economic development that have started around the airport. Look at what's happening in Hapeville, College Park, and so on and so forth. A lot of development because of the location of the airport and what the airports mean in terms of its connectivity. What are some of the challenges we will see in future airport? Of course, climate change. We're looking at consolidation, new carriers, and you know, we could talk here all morning about politics, world event, the economy, and these things are cyclic, and so we have to keep an eye on all of this here as we go forward. Consolidation of carriers, and also the privatization of airport in the United States. There's a lot of talks about privatization going forward right now, and that is airport that, or government, or the body that can afford to, and looking at bringing private entity to run those airports. Funding requirement, airport will continue to need funding requirement. Today, by all estimate, commercial airport in the United States have $115 billion worth of infrastructure needs, immediate need. And I said, you know, we have about an annual $28 billion for operations and infrastructure built. So we will continue to look at funding sources and how best to maximize non-aeronautical funding at the airport. Atlanta stands in a very, very good position. We're in a very strong position as it pertains to funding. So we're very happy where we are today. Saudi Arabia, as I said, destination airport, some more concept of what they're building, another shot of Singapore. And with that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation. Very, very high-level snapshot of what we are looking at in developing our airport here in the forefront.
Thank you, Mr. Bayadari. Again, to my colleagues in the public, this is not their quarterly aviation presentation, but a presentation I asked the airport to present on kind of trends and forces shaping aviation, and that we should be able to take into account as we consider their proposals when they come before us. This will be the first of several we'll have throughout next year as well. We're going to have Delta come talk about what's facing airlines. We're going to hear from some folks on, unrelated to the airport, what the future of office space in the Central Business District looks like and what that means for mobility and connectivity. How we think about e-mobility, all these things that should shape our public policy decision-making. Very quickly before I pass it on to my colleagues for their questions, I appreciate you flagging Changi Airport in Singapore. You know, that's not a new evolution of it. For decades, they've been lauded for being, in many cases, the best airport in the world for the experience perspective, alongside our world-class ability to move folks through. I would argue that's our biggest space to grow, right, is the aesthetics and the experience of the airport. We're very good at processing huge numbers of people in massively efficient ways that has led to our success. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about understanding that we have physical limitations on where we can grow and how you can build out concourses in the airport physical space. You know, what is, you fast forward 10, 15 years, if you could wave a magic wand, what is a Hartsfield-Jackson experience look like? How do we improve and compete with the world's best airport experiences? So
I always, whenever I'm on the speaking circuit, I tell people, when you look at Singapore Airport or you look at Tel Aviv Airport, they're state-owned. I mean, literally, that's government, the country-owned airport, and they have one airport to pour all the resource into. We have 550 commercial airport here. So when you think about it, 550 distribution of fund, and we have very, very limited funds. So the law states that we airport have to make money, and spend money for its own development. So Atlanta, as you all know, have been doing a phenomenal job on that. We sit in a very, very small footprint, 4,700 acres, right? When you compare us to DFW or Bush Intercontinental, when I was the general manager for Bush Intercontinental, 10,000 acres. And so what we're looking at how do we maximize that footprint that we're sitting on. And we are getting to a point where instead of building laterally, we may start to have to build vertically. And building vertically in the existing footprint within existing infrastructure, we got to strengthen all of that, and it will be very, very expensive. We have some other areas that we could maximize, and we will have to take one area out, and there is a number of elements that we have to follow. For example, we have a concept right now to add 8 domestic gates at Concourse T south side, right? But we'll have to take half of the south parking deck. But before we remove half of the south parking deck, we have to build a new parking deck to it. So it's a rippling effect, and so we have to do backward planning. Concourse G is an area that we're looking at, and then the bump out of Concourse A, B, and C and D. But in order for us to do that, it's not simple. We have to move taxiways, Foxtrot and Echo on the north side, because of the safety requirement and so on and so forth. And so we have a number of concepts. We have very smart people evaluating all of that. And at the end of the day, we still have to pour money into the aesthetic modernization of the airport. As I said, airports are becoming a destination. We got to listen to the customer. We just can't build for. Those are the things I just mentioned, referring to capacity. But we got to build for accommodating the wants of the people who are paying for the service.
Thank you. I'll note before I pass it to Councilmember Dozier, we've been joined by Councilmember Overstreet and Councilmember Lewis. So we do not have a quorum. After we finish Q&A for this presentation, we'll pause reports and go to communications and come back and finish the reports. Councilmember Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Biodari. I appreciate it. I really appreciate this presentation because I love this sort of stuff. One of the things that really stuck out to me was the portion about how international growth is kind of happening around us. You've seen population growth in other countries, and you're seeing countries respond to international needs related to building and constructing new airports. At the same time, here domestically in the United States, you've seen a growth of remote work, so you have less demand for business travel. The organization I worked at for the last 10 years, I used to travel 15, 20 times a year for work. Now I've only flown once in the last 3 years. And I imagine other sorts of, especially smaller nonprofits, are having the same sort of calculus when it comes to determining whether to do something over Zoom or to fly their employees across the country. And so I wonder, just kind of recognizing international travel is growing, domestic travel, I know we're getting back to the pre-pandemic levels, but we're not quite there yet. Are we doing anything with regards to international terminal in terms of finding growth opportunities there to be able to be more responsive to that growth of international travel? Recognizing Atlanta is continuing to position itself as an international city. You got the World Cup, but then beyond, I know you have a lot of international travelers finding a new home here in Atlanta. But if you can talk to kind of what we're doing around an international terminal, that would be great.
That's an excellent question. And so last year when I took over the job, one of the very first things I looked at is what's happening in this region. And as a result of what's happening, what would it mean for the airport? And what I saw happening was this explosion of industry growth here. At my last conference, when we were speaking to the investor, myself and my CFO in New York earlier this year, when we were going out for new money, I mentioned that there are 12 industries, very strong industries, everything from technology to entertainment to manufacturing and so on, 12 industries here. And so I looked at, and then over the last several months, the announcement of other industries or more coming into the state of Georgia. And what does that mean for us here in terms of air service demand? And you're absolutely right. There's going to be a demand for business travel from international coming to the city of Atlanta, and then their onward journey to these industry here in the local area, right? So when I looked at that, one of the things we pulled out, and we're starting now to complete the planning, is we have a 28 gate international terminal complex known as Concourse E, but it's dated. It's stale. It is by no means close to the international airport standard. And so we are going to embark on modernizing those 28 gates, again, to present to the international traveler a level of service that they are experiencing from their point of origin. Secondly, we don't only want international business traveler to come to the city of Atlanta, but we want international leisure traveler to use this airport as a destination airport to come and enjoy our great city. And think about all the stuff we have: CNN, World of Coca-Cola, College Football Hall of Fame, one of the best aquarium in the world. I was fortunate to join Mayor Dickens there yesterday morning with a cabinet member for our end of year cabinet meeting, and it just pure gorgeousness when you look at it. And the mayor said to us, how can I compete with fish? How can I compete with the fish? Because all of you are staring at the fish. So we have a lot of stuff going here. We have world-class sports team, and we want this to be a destination airport, and we want international traveler to come here as a destination to attract some of the economic boom. So we're looking at all of this and how do we prepare our international airport, both E and F for that. I think we have enough capacity based on our current forecast for the next decade plus, but we also have plan on the books to extend the international facility if the demand presents itself.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that answer. And then my other question, one of the things that wasn't in this presentation, but I know it factors into our designation as the busiest airport in the world, but with cargo transportation and the volume of just the fact that we're a logistics hub and that side of the airport that doesn't get spoken of highly enough. Can you talk to maybe some things that you've identified as being potential opportunities or growth areas or places that we will need to take into consideration as we look at future financial investments in the airport more broadly?
So just recently, we opened up an additional 100,000 square foot facility known as Cargo Building C. The user of this facility is putting in the latest and most modern technology to process greater volume of cargo. Right now, we have on the books that is in active construction, we are completing the enabling work for what we call modern air cargo 2A2B. That will add another 400,000 to 500,000 square feet of cargo facility. So the enabling work is well underway. We have gone out for a P3, a private developer, to develop the rest of the cargo facility, bring in operator, and manage it on an extended term lease. We received those proposals. We have evaluated those proposals, and we are now in discussion with the winning proponent on the scope and requirement of what this facility should look like and how it should be developed. So we are moving very, very fast in developing and expanding cargo because it's important to the region.
Thank you, Mr. Biodari. Mr. Chair, I yield.
Thank you, Councilmember Dozier. Councilmember Overstreet.
Thank you, Chair Faroki. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor.
So I would like to say that today, I didn't expect this presentation. I think that it's fabulous. Like, it is a transportation junkies dream report. And I want more of that. I'm thinking that we should put together a coffee table edition and include more airports and just make it gorgeous. Because I truly enjoyed all of those types of, statistics with efficiency, like you usually do. You have the data there, but then you're talking in terms of who's getting the next airport and how many and where. And that's just interesting stuff to me. And I appreciate that. So thank you for your presentation, as always. But I would actually argue that our balance between the customer experience and our efficiency is spot on. Because I know that the countries that are looking to add 80 or however many airports, they would love to have our efficiency. also. So I think that what we do is phenomenal, and I appreciate you for sticking to our plans and our strategic goals each and every day. So, so much so that I actually had the pleasure of joining Aerotropolis, ATL. I think they changed their name now. To on a couple trips this year to go and explore innovative ways to expand our experience, sprouting out from the airport. And I think those ways look like different, fun, efficient ways to go to attractions close to the airport, like the PRT, which is the personal rapid transit, to take you to like hotels that are nearby, employee areas, close cities like College Park and East Point and other areas. So we have areas where the experience can be expanded and beautiful, and I think that we're exploring those and working with those entities. And I do want to do more of that. You do know the trips that I'm talking about, right? Because
Yes,
I know
ma'am, the
Frank
link,
Rucker
the
came with
link
us.
and the PRT trip.
That's right. We went to Guadalajara and we went to San Francisco to look at those models. And I think that we have opportunities to expand our experience in those ways. And also, they actually came to our board meeting. You know, I'm a member of the board of directors of the ATL board. And they came and we're like, we decided to fund a study for them. So I think that we're headed in the right direction as far as where our experience is concerned. And again, I really appreciate this type of presentation, something that really doesn't affect the bottom line, but shows us that we're spending our money in the right ways throughout the year, and that we are planned all the way up to, I don't know, 20,000. And we're going to always do what we're supposed to do for the city, and I appreciate that.
Thank you for those kind words, Council Member. Two things. The trip that you took, I have been having conversation with ARC, with the CID, and with Aerotropolis, and I said, what we need to do is look at a regional solution to transportation and intermodal connectivity to the airport. And so we got to be very thoughtful. And so I'm glad that there's an open dialogue going on right now. I've had several meetings with them, and this open dialogue for us to share the same vision in having a solution for the region, and not from the airport to a headquarters or to a marketplace. And so very, very good conversation, very, very good thought process that is coming through all of that. And secondly, I said, I want to thank this body and the entire City Council for your all support, what you all are doing in terms of the development of this airport.
Thank you. And I agree with you. The experience, to heighten our experience, I think an opportunity through connectivity is a good way to do that. So thank you, and happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Overstreet. Councilmember Juan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. General Manager Biodari, I'm looking at slide 5 where you're talking about the infrastructure trends and projections in Asia and the Middle East. I think those numbers are kind of jaw-dropping about the number of airports they're going to add over the next 10, 15 years. And I think the first reaction is, wow, that's, competition. But the second reaction I have is, whoa, those are connections. Those are connections for folks flying in and out of Atlanta that we benefit from. But that's also predicated on what the airlines do in terms of adding routes. My question is pretty simple. What role does ATL have in those conversations and decisions that the airlines make in saying, okay, we've got a new airport in the Middle East or in Asia and China, and we want to go from Atlanta there? Do we sit in on those conversations with them and FAA, or is that just a decision they get to make on their own?
So there is two different aspects to your question, right? Number one is, the first is a domestic airline or a U.S. airline wanting to extend service internationally. They will have those internal discussions with their network people. they will reach out to foreign government and have those discussions with foreign government. But once they are at a certain point in that decision, they will come to the airport and meet with the airport official and start talking about their plans for that, requirements from the airport, make sure that we have gate, we have all the supporting elements and stuff like that. So it's a collaborative effort. And so when that decision is made and that announcement is made publicly, they're launching new service, everything is already in place. Now on the reverse side, for an international carrier that want to come to a United States domestic airport, they will start a conversation internally with their body to make sure that they have the appropriate asset and everything else. And then they will advance that conversation with the airport leadership. And that's what is happening right now. I'm having several conversations with several international carriers that is looking at Atlanta, and there's stuff that they want to understand, like what is our incentive air service plan? Are we going to give them money? What we are doing, I have asked Jai Farrell, who's my chief commercial officer, to put together a packet to show them the benefit of coming in here, the economic benefits and the other residual benefits, because we are one of the most cost competitive airport to fly into. Houston, let's say, may give you $1 million to come in here, but over time, that has a sunset, right? If you come to Atlanta, it's into perpetuity as long as you're operating here, and look at your return of investment. So it's a great conversation, and then the economic benefit, because airline will put their asset where they will be most profitable. So we do have that conversation with them, and so hopefully keep finger crossed. As we look at these numbers, especially in India when I was there, they're absolutely firm on that. I heard it both from the airlines, from airports, and from government officials. They're doing that. And to talk about, Councilmember Overstreet, when you talk about people looking at Atlanta Airport being efficient and the busiest, a lot of the airport are copying the layout of Atlanta Airport. Atlanta Airport, being the first, is designed in such a way, not crosswind runways and stuff like that, but everything is parallel, orient, north, south, east, west. Denver was the first airport that used our concept, and now a lot of airports in both India and China are using that concept. So to answer your question, Councilmember One, yes, we do have conversation with the airlines.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little surprised that it's not sooner than you described it. But all that said, I mean, so long as we're involved and we can factor that into our projections, our capacity need projections, I think that is what I was really driving at, is that, it's one thing for all these numbers to go up, but it's a completely different to make sure that we are standing ready, that we've built appropriately and not find ourselves that we underbuilt. Okay, well, thank you.
Or on the Riverside overbuilt. So that's
Sure,
why
yeah.
we're very thoughtful in what we do on terms, because it costs a lot of money to expand.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you, Chairman.
The timing has to be just perfect.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Baradari, for you and your team's effort in putting together that presentation. As you can see, I think it was well received and good perspective and context for us as we consider the nitty-gritty that you bring to us on a monthly or biweekly basis, right? Whether it's an expansion project or how we think about concessions, how we think about parking, all sorts of mobility issues, both within air travel but also at the airport. So we appreciate your expertise and sharing your thoughts on the future of airports. Thank you. Have a great rest of the year, and I'm sure we'll hear from you for some legislation here shortly. But
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two things. Concession phase two packages are in solicitations or in blackout period, just as an FYI. Secondly, this is the first Transportation Committee meeting in 12 months that I don't have a paper that I will present on. So you guys could go easy on me. And the last thing is, I want to wish you all a safe and enjoyable holiday season with you and your family. I'm looking forward to working with this body come next year.
thank you. Well, on your, you thought it was going to be an off day because there were no piece of legislation. We made you come in anyway. So thank you for being here.
Mr. Lewis won't give me that tough time today too. So thank you all very much.
We have a couple other reports, but I want to pause and respect the time of our appointees that we'll be hearing from today. So let's jump to G, communications, and move through those three.
Mr. Chair, we have to adopt the agenda and approve the minutes.
Motion to adopt the agenda by Juan, second by Faroki. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
I'm banging my hand as the gavel.
Vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. The agenda has been adopted.
Motion to approve the minutes by Juan, second by Overstreet. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. The minutes have been approved. This takes us to Section G, Communications. Item number 1, 22C, 5184. A communication from Council President Doug Shipman appointing Mr. Claude Winstead to serve as a member of the Stakeholder Oversight Committee. This appointment is for a term of 2 years.
Mr. Winstead, are you with us today? Please come forward and tell us a little bit about your background and why you'd like to serve in this role.
Well, my background is I've worked in the city of Atlanta for probably 30 years as a developer with Trammell Crow, then with Cousins Properties. I was president of a firm called Beers Construction here in Atlanta for a number of years. Moved on with the Gellerstad Group, again, development and consulting with the state, and have done a lot of consulting for nonprofits throughout the Atlanta area, more specifically the Woodruff Foundation, and also worked with Morehouse recently on the Martin Luther King renovation there. So Doug asked me to serve, so I've worked with Doug before on the Civil and Human Rights Museum, and also worked with him at the Woodruff Foundation when he was president there. And I just enjoy working in the city and making it further. I'm currently a program manager for CHOA, the hospital right up the street on, and my firm just serves many places in Atlanta. So he asked me and I volunteered and I said I'd be glad to. I'd enjoy that.
Thank you. Councilmember Juan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, let me thank you for your willingness to serve on this. I think it's really important, the functionality that we're looking to when we establish this oversight group with the Moving Atlanta Forward program. The one thing I will say is I think in this, in terms of when we set out the legislation, all the things we wanted to have y'all look at and watch with us, I think it's a budget and project scheduling and progress and all that. I think the one thing that isn't in here that has kind of changed since when this was all established has to do with, again, channeling Councilmember Dozier. I mean, I think inflationary prices have really changed the dynamic of project budget. So the one thing I would add to this and just emphasize for you is value engineering. I think we're going to need to lean into that more than we had anticipated before, because things are just costing more than we had originally projected. And while there is a contingency line item in the budget, I'm sure we've eaten into that pretty closely. So I just real quickly, any sort of experience you have on the many projects I'm sure you've done with value engineering and making sure that that is incorporated?
Yeah, I believe most projects I've ever worked on, airports, large hospitals, anything of that nature requires looking at budgets and making sure we're getting value for that. And you're truly, over the past 2 years, we've seen numerous subcontractors been forced into either bankruptcy or because of fixed contracts. And that's not what the industry really needs, but value engineering is important to look at the value of what we get. I mean, you can always do it the way the architect designed it. As a program manager, we often consult with architects and an owner's rep. There are better ways of doing things. And maybe they're 95%, but there's giving, if you can get input from the contractors and the architects, you can come up with a solution, generally, that's beneficial to all.
Well, yeah, I mean, your skill set and experience are impeccable, and I'm happy to make the motion to approve.
Thank you. Motion by Juan, second by Faroki. Please open the vote on item number 1.
The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winstead. Your Your presence today is appreciated, and it will move forward to full council. You do not need to be there at full council. Thank you.
Item number 2, 22C 5185, a communication from Mayor Andre Dickens appointing Ms. Jennifer N.I. to serve as a member of the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority Board of Directors for the City of Atlanta. This appointment is for a term of 4 years.
Thank you, Councilmember Ide. Welcome back to
Thank
City
you.
Hall and to this room. Please tell us a little bit about your interest in serving on the MARTA board.
Sure. So I know most of you all, but I'm Jennifer Ide. I served with the majority of you all the previous term and had the honor and privilege of being on the Transportation Committee then, as well as on the Zoning Committee, which I think is a related factor in all of the transportation decisions that we make in the city. By background, for everybody else, I'm a lawyer. I've practiced law in Atlanta, which is my birth city and hometown. For my whole life, I'm about the same age as the MARTA system. My father was actually part of the small team of people that got the referendum passed in the city and got the original system up and running. So I'm probably the only person that can say I had a picture of a MARTA bus on my living room wall growing up. And also a little bit relevant to this experience, my father had a tortoise painted with the MARTA stripes on his dresser growing up also, that a friend gave him as a joke, that he was determined to be the tortoise that actually beat the hare at the end, from being determined to get it done. But as our wonderful city grows and faces the growth that we are all excited about, but also, you know, a little intimidated on how does our city absorb the number of people who want to move here, who want to live here, work here, have a high quality of life, we know that we have to have a transportation system that accommodates them. And I think MARTA really needs to strive to not being a transportation system of last resort, but of first choice. We need to have a transportation system that people want to ride our buses and trains because it's a better experience than being on our roads. So that's what I hope that I can be a part of on the MARTA board.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about your views on Beltline Rail and how you see the Beltline as a transit corridor or not?
Yeah. I think this has been a debate for many, many years of the rail versus BRT versus some other sort of system. And the devil's in the details. We can come up with great ideas of how that we should have a transportation corridor, and then when you get to, you know, looking at the details, their utility issues, their rail issues, which have probably the most favorable federal law out there, those railroads. So overall, I think we need to be putting transit systems in place that get people from their homes to their jobs, to their doctor's appointments, to their schools. But the exact method and mode, I think at the end of the day, you have to look at each corridor and see what technically makes sense. I'll say when I was on city council, I walked from Bennett Street all the way to Emory on the CSX rail line, which was probably not allowed. But I did it because I really wanted to see all the obstacles that stood in the way there. And as stewards of taxpayer money, I think we need to look and see what makes sense where. There are some enormous obstacles on old bridges, on property acquisitions. So standing here today, I can't tell you what that ends up being. I know that MARTA has, you know, there's a section of the Beltline that is designated to have transit on it. Part of my excitement about joining the board is to, you know, hear those engineering reports, hear what the challenges are and what the best use of the money is. I think when we get down to the should it be bus, should it be rail, overall, the two things that we need to make sure of is that communities feel like it's a commitment that the system's there and the system's there to stay, and that it's a high-quality system, that they're not getting, you know, a second-class stepchild, you know, system in place. And I think that the BRT of today that other cities have can meet those two requirements.
I have two more questions that I'll turn over to my colleagues who have their hands raised. Much like your tortoise as a child, MARTA at times feels slow to respond to trends in transportation, one of which is on-demand service. A number of other transit agencies have been frankly, quicker to act, more hare than tortoise on exploring how to integrate on-demand transit service to residents. Maybe not one-to-one, but, you know, and MARTA's experimenting right now in a small swath of town. You know, what role does a board member or the board play in pushing the institution to recognize where mobility is going and adjust its technology and approaches?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the board is there to help make policy decisions, and it is a policy decision, I think, to have a first-class transit system and all that that means. You know, operationally, I think we hire really, really good people to implement that, but we also make sure that our senior leadership is accountable and coming to us. I mean, this was a 40-year tax that we're implementing, but it shouldn't take 40 years to put the system in place, or it's going to be 40 years outdated. So I do think we need to make sure that we are hearing from the operational senior management that they're not only looking to see what the cutting edge, you know, systems are out there, but they're implementing on a expedient basis. And you know, when I served on transportation with you, every single time MARTA came, I asked them, when am I going to be able to pay with my phone when I get on a bus? And it's frustrating when you know that I can do this in other places and why we aren't doing it in the city. So that's definitely high on my list. I work for a technology company that my sister and I started in my day life in the healthcare space. But we need to have a system that's following the smartest, best trends out there.
And
Or being a leader, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. My last question is just around accountability. You know, what role will you play in, obviously, the MARTA is accountable to the board. I mean, that's the nature of the structure of board relationship to MARTA. But I think there is frustration. I will just speak for myself. I suspect there's frustration among some of my colleagues as well on kind of transparency with more MARTA funds and the tortoise-like nature of implementation. And so I think what we'd all like to see is more transparent communication and accountability from MARTA to the city, not to speak of other jurisdictions that are also accountable to. And what role will you play in being a voice for accountability?
Yeah. Well, I think for one thing, all of you all up there have my cell phone number, so you know where I live and you know how to find me. I also hope this is why Mayor Dickens asked me to serve in this role, is my service for the city, and really, he has seen me when we've worked on transportation projects, whether it was Renew Atlanta, and the painful rebaselining that we did and getting projects going, that, you know, I'm as determined as you all that when we take taxpayer money and we see a need out there, that we implement the money and get the projects going. So, Antonio, I'm very sorry. Councilmember Lewis, if you don't have my cell phone number, I will give it to you. Everybody else up at the dais has it for sure. But I am here, you know, as the city's representative, and I'm available to you, so call me at any time.
Thank you. I will move to approve, but first we'll pass it on to Councilmember Overstreet.
Councilmember Ide, it is so good to see you.
You too.
So this is like best case scenario for me because of your intentionality. And, you know, even when we don't see eye to eye, oh my goodness, we will definitely be able to discuss what all of the facts are and the details are, and the devil is always in the details, and you don't miss them. And so for that reason, I am very excited about the ongoing communication that I know council will have because of you being on this board. And we don't know all of the answers to exactly what belongs where and how quick it should be there, but I do know that the way that you pay attention to every aspect of whatever it is you're working on, that you're gonna know. And because you know, I'm gonna know, because I do have your cell phone number. And you are, you know, one that I feel very comfortable going back and forth with about pretty much anything. So I really am excited about this appointment. because you did go through that. And I actually call it exactly what you call it, the painful baselining, rebaselining of the Renew. And so I know that we can get everything that we're asking for of MARTA for the city. I just think that it requires us all to do just what we just talked about, figure out, pay attention and figure out how to be expeditious and how to actually implement. And that does include being transparent and accountable. So I'm excited about it.
Thank
Very
you.
much excited about it. So over this holiday season, I'm going to track you down
Yep.
and we're going to sit down because I'm going to have 2 weeks to
Well,
do it.
Right, right. I want to hear about Campbellton Road directly from you.
That's right. Every little aspect of it, of the, everything. We will talk about it all. So I'm excited about your appointment. So second, and thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Councilmember Overstreet. So we have a motion and a second, but we do have a question and/or comment from Councilmember Lewis.
Yes.
And you're right. I think this is our first time actually ever speaking. So I'm probably the only council member up here who doesn't have your phone number. My question to you is if MARTA came and you sat on this committee and they gave their report to you one committee meeting before closing down the Atlanta streetcar, what would you feel? How would you feel if you were a council member?
Yeah, I think if I were a council member, I would feel like I should have heard that earlier than the public's hearing it.
I want to say thank you for wanting to sit on the board. I want you to remember how you would feel as a council member as we move forward with our relationship with MARTA, because I think Atlanta is the strongest city, and this partnership has to be a better partnership.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis. So motion by Frokie, second by Overstreet. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Ms. Ide.
All right,
Yeah.
happy holidays to all of you.
Thank you. Same to you.
Item number 3, 22C 5186, a communication from Mayor Andre Dickens appointing Mr. Jacob Tagabe to serve as a member of the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority Board of Directors for the City of Atlanta. This is appointments for a term of 4 years.
Mr. Zagabe, welcome back to City Hall and this committee room. It's good to see you. Please tell us a little bit about why you want to serve in this role.
All right. Hello, committee. Thank you for having me today. My name is Jacob Zagaiba. I'm a resident of Atlanta. I live in the West End, born and raised around the city, aside from a couple years abroad. My background's in engineering, so undergrad master's from Georgia Tech in transportation. Go Jackets. And then I did graduate school in the UK, also focused on transportation and urban planning, 2 master's degrees at the University College London. Professionally, I've worked in the space. I care deeply about transportation, and I care deeply about Atlanta. And, you know, I'm just extremely excited at the opportunity to bring some of my expertise in school, working here at City Hall around transportation policy, and in my last role working at a transportation tech company to think about how we can serve Atlanta better. The last thing I'll just say, my job that I'm currently in is in Buckhead. I ride MARTA every day to work. It's something that I see on a daily basis. It's something that I care about. And to the point that Councilmember Ide made earlier, I think we have a wonderful opportunity to make Atlanta an awesome place to live and a way that we can move in any way we want. And public transportation is going to play a huge role in that.
Thank you. A couple questions from me before I turn it over to Council Members Overstreet, Lewis, and Dozier. Your thoughts on Beltline Rail and the Beltline as a transit corridor?
Absolutely. So I'll say that the Beltline was planned as a transit corridor, and that's very important in the way that we thought about it. And I think that creates optionality. I think as we think about where transit will go and what will the mode be, I would, echo what Councilmember Ide said, that, those are corridor-specific decisions that I'm not privy to every engineering detail of, but I do think that we have to get to the answer of. We have to, we have made commitments on where we're going to put transit on that corridor. It needs to be extremely high quality, and we need to be very transparent on why we make the decision that we make, and it needs to be something that people understand. And I think those are all things that we can get to. I know there are aspirations for, a lot, transit on the entire corridor and pieces like that, and specifically rail. And I think those are pieces that, we have to work through with the budget that we have and make sure that we're very clear on what we can and can't do.
And thank you. And can you speak to your and/or the board's role in increasing accountability when it comes to oversight of City of Atlanta funding streams and projects?
Absolutely. So I would say 3 roles: policy, accountability, and transparency. And I think the best way to drive accountability is transparency. I think as I think about potentially being in this role, the most important thing I can do is help drive transparency. Ask the questions, make sure we're getting answers, and most importantly, make sure those answers are clear. And, you know, from having worked at City Hall, I know that just having an answer isn't enough. That answer needs to be digestible, it needs to be understandable, and it needs to be something that is accessible to everybody. So I'd say that would be my big push around accountability, making sure that we are pushing for transparency in a way that people can understand. And when we have a conversation, we are talking eye to eye and not talking apples to pears.
Thank you. Councilmember Overstreet.
Thank you so much for agreeing to serve on the MARTA board. I am just as excited about your appointment. Like, what a day. This is a great way to end the year for transportation, for sure. And I am, you know, for pretty much the same reasons. I just love the work that you do, and I know that it's intentional. By you saying that whatever's happening in the MARTA space should be digestible, accessible. I mean, those are the words that, you know, really ring true to me as far as accountability is concerned. And I'm excited about it. And I know that our citizens will be too. So move approval.
Thank you. We do have a motion to approve, second by Juan. Councilor Lewis.
And similar question to the last person. If you were sitting on the board and MARTA came to the previous committee meeting and gave us a report of everything going on, then 1 week later closed down the Atlanta streetcar without telling city council, the mayor, or anybody else as a board member, not without telling their partnership union as well, how would you feel as a board member?
Yeah, I would feel like, you know, we need to work a little tighter as partners, right? And the partnership, working together, communicating, and just making sure we're on the same page. That said, I don't know the background, and I don't know, you know, what was known a week ago versus now and all those pieces. But, you know, I think this is a group that you want to be working in partnership with and lockstep with.
I like collaboration, group project. I like group projects. So thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Councilmember Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jacob, so good to see you again. I'm thankful for your appointment. I'm thankful that you're a constituent, that you live in West End, and I'm particularly thankful for the fact that you've been in this work for a long time. You were instrumental in the creation of the Department of Transportation. You're an active user of the MARTA system, and I think it's incredible to have voices like yours on the board, because you know that MARTA isn't just about buses and trains. It's also about how do you get to your bus? How do you get to your train? That includes ensuring that we have a holistic view of walkability and bikeability and multimodality, and how we make sure our systems work for everybody. One of the facts that I share with folks when we talk about the need to connect residents to the region is the fact that from the census data, most recent census, the census tract with the largest proportion of residents that don't own a car or have access to a car is right in West End, right in District 4 as far as the city is concerned. And so I'm appreciative that your voice will be on the board. I feel like this body's going to move you forward, so I'm not worried about that. But I'm just thankful to have you as a constituent and have you as someone who's going to be able to speak to these issues in ways that I think many other members of the board haven't been able to speak to in a long time. So I know it's already been moved and seconded, but I look forward to voting yes for you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Motion by Overstreet, second by Juan. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable.
We'll now track back to section F, presentations. We all should have received an ARC quarterly update via handout from Councilmember Westmoreland. Hasn't been distributed yet? Okay, but it will be. So we'll get that over email. If we need to bring it up as a topic at our first meeting at the top of 2023, we will, when Councilmember Westmoreland provides a report. He will not be on the committee next year, but will continue to provide reports to us as our designee to the ARC. The Cascade Road Complete Street project construction Kingsdale update has been rescheduled. Is that correct?
Correct.
So when? And then I'll refer to Councilmember Overstreet.
To the first meeting, to the first meeting in January.
Okay. Ms. Overstreet.
Yes. I just want to make sure that I say publicly that I'm fine with that, and we are working on a few things behind the scenes, so we'll be ready for the first meeting.
Terrific. And our final presentation this morning is from MARTA. I asked them to come before us today. It's not a quarterly update from them. As context for the public, the downtown streetcar had its streetcar service suspended until sometime in the spring while safety repairs are made to the tracks and to the vehicles. I sent a letter on Friday to CEO Greenwood regarding the lack of notice that was provided to council members. Councilor Lewis has referred to that in his previous questions, but also to the message it sends as we try and move towards streetcar expansion and what this means for management and execution of streetcar service. So I will turn the floor over to MARTA. Please introduce yourselves, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. I am George Wright. I am the Chief Operating Officer for MARTA, and beside me we have Daniel Heck. He is the Deputy Chief Mechanical Officer. I will defer to him if there, around questions and commentary around the technical aspects. This body does, in fact, know that we put a temporary safety hold on the operation of the Siemens S70 streetcars on November 30th. We did this out of an abundance of safety. I'll have Daniel talk to some of those technical aspects. I do want to make it clear to this body and the broader audience that there hasn't been a suspension or cessation of transit service along the alignment. So immediately and as a part of that safety hold, we replaced that service with effectively buses, our L-van cutaways that we use with our mobility transit mode. We will continue to deliver service for the entirety of the safety hold, and we will work in an expedited manner to get the Siemens S70s back into service. If I will, I'll ask Daniel to kind of, refresh the, I think some of this you've probably seen before, but I'll ask him to speak to some of the technical aspects.
Great. I think you have control of the deck, so please go ahead.
Okay, so the question you all are asking is why did we remove the Siemens S70s from service? So routine track inspections a few weeks ago, the track workers found some loose and broken bolts on the track switch points. That's the picture on the left. We did a deeper dive into exactly why that may be occurring. On the right, you see a picture of the embedded trackway. The tracks are poured cement around them for multimodal usage. The green line shows where the flange of the wheel, that little nub, the circumference around the wheel, would normally travel in the trackway. Now, the orange line shows some chipping of the concrete. There's also that red circle there. That is caused by a false flange condition of the wheel sets. So here is the wheel profile of a train wheel on the left, and we took a cutaway of that in the photo. And if you look at that blue shaded area, and then where the blue arrow is pointing, if you take a two-dimensional outline of that where the wheel touches the rail head, and then transpose that on the right, that's effectively that blue line. The green is the rail head, and then you float the wheel a few inches off just for purposes of the illustration. And you'll notice that the wheels are tapered, and that's by design. Now, the red line is the current state of the wheels. They've worn away significantly in the tread and in the flange. Now, the high flanges and tread wear and false flanges can cause ride quality issues, a high probability of derailment, and as the pictures before showed, some trackway damage. That false flange on the right, that's what's riding against the embedded concrete and chipping away. Now, we had noticed wheel wear going back to October of 2021, and we immediately had a contract with Siemens, the manufacturer, to replace the wheels. Now, we can't true the wheels because of diameter constraints, so we had to replace all of the wheels. So this has been in process. Now, the degradation of the wheels has accelerated, so we have expedited those repairs with Siemens. We have our first set of wheels going off on flatbed truck today, actually, to Sacramento, California, to be replaced. But in the interest of safety, as George had said, and to protect the infrastructure and the safety of the public, we decided to remove these wheels from service until they're repaired. MARTA's priorities. Obviously, number one is safety, just as George said. We're not going to do anything that puts the safety at risk. Running these Siemens S70 cars posed a risk that we did not deem acceptable. And this was not an easy or we didn't take this decision lightly. This was multiple stakeholders at MARTA all got together, and we jointly said this is the right decision to put these cars on safety hold. Our second priority is continuity of service. As George had mentioned, we are still providing transit service along the streetcar corridor on the right. We are using cutaway type vehicles right now. We are having those wrapped. There's an image of what the wrap will look like. It's going to look like the streetcar colors theme. We have streetcar operators operating these vehicles as well in conjunction with mobility operators. That way, there's a consistency. The riders know the operators, and they're familiar with the route. And lastly, our priority is regular streetcar service operations resume. We are doing everything we possibly can to get the Siemens S70 cars back into service as quickly and safely as possible.
Well,
Thank you.
Open for any questions you might have.
Great. I think we do see a number of folks lined up for questions, but I'd like to start. So I represent part of the footprint that the streetcar runs through. My colleague, Councilor Bakhtiari, represents the other footprint where the streetcar runs through. Neither of us were notified. I sent a letter expressing dismay to the CEO, and I received an apology. But can you talk a little bit about why the mayor, ATL DOT, nor council members were notified of this change in service?
I will start off by saying that it was this body and the city of Atlanta is owed an apology, and I believe that was transmitted by our CEO, Mr. Greenwood. I will say that we have learned, and we will do better the next time in regards to communication. Our first, we believe that our first responsibility was, in fact, to our board, and we made that communication formally to the board, I believe, on the 8th, and I will make a commitment as the chief operating officer that we will create those lines of communication to make sure that if there is this type of disruption to the norm, we will, make sure we do that immediately.
So I appreciate the mea culpa, the apology. And I take you at your word for it, and CEO Greenwood's word for it. I think that the broader damage it does is that it undermines our trust in MARTA and our willingness to, not willingness, but our feeling that we're partners in this, right? We need MARTA, but we also need MARTA to do better, right? We need y'all to be side by side with us as we try and deliver transit to our residents, but also expand transit. And in this case, using this mode of transit, this very line, right? And it makes it difficult with residents, but also intellectually, sometimes with us, to push forward for expansion, understanding cost constraints, technical constraints, if we don't feel like we're kind of lockstep. And so I think I speak for most of my colleagues, though certainly for myself as someone who represents part of the streetcar route, that regular communication on service interruptions, which we receive for for heavy rail lines and for bus lines somewhat regularly, should also apply to the streetcar. So that's, my point is made. My colleagues may want to make additional points on that topic. The second question I have is, why wasn't the wear and tear on the wheels discovered earlier?
Well, I think as Mr. Heck indicated, we knew that, first we know that there will be wear and tear on the streetcar wheels, just like there's wear and tear on the wheels on your, or the tires on your POV. This was programmed some time ago. As he indicated, there is a long lead time inherently with replacing the wheels on these type of vehicles. We're also subject to some of the supply chain issues that have affected the global supply chain. So this was like I said, this was something we programmed back more than a year ago, and it was scheduled accordingly. But as we went out and did those weekly inspections, we saw that there was an acceleration and a degradation of the current state, and we needed to act. But we knew, I think when we accepted the streetcar from the city in 2018, we knew that that this type of overhaul and replacement would need to occur.
I don't think any of us fault MARTA for putting safety first, as you should, for all of your modes of operation. So we appreciate that you caught this before something bad happened. But it does, I think, give me pause with respect to the escalation in a very short amount of time from recognizing that these wheels were a problem to suspending service, when it seems, at least from the outside, even with your explanation, that kind of full attention to the streetcar maintenance and safety would have demonstrated much earlier that this was going to happen, and we would have been able to phase in repairs and service without taking the physical streetcar off the rails and sending it to California.
Well, that was always going to be a part of the plan to actually ship them over to Sacramento to do that. But, Chairman, I will concede that there is learning going on, and we're going to be taking that learning that's occurring right now to make sure that something like this is not repeated in the future.
Thank you. My last question is a little bit of a, no pun intended, third rail, and perhaps the elephant in the room, and is that, you're replacing streetcar service with these shuttle buses, which I think begs the question, as we think about transit expansion and mode of transit, a shuttle bus is more nimble. You can add frequency at a much cheaper rate than with adding streetcars. How should we be looking at the fact that streetcar service is being replaced with shuttles, with the backdrop that we're talking about expanding the streetcar, both to the east side, but also to the west side and around the Beltline? Meaning, why aren't we doing this first before we decide where to put a streetcar line? Meaning run shuttles and buses, so that we understand demand and frequency demand needs, et cetera.
Well, Chairman, I believe you've probably posed this question. I've been here throughout the entire meeting. I think you've posed this question in a different form to some of the previous speakers, and I will tell you that I guess the, quote that the devil's in the details. We would, there's a comprehensive look that needs to occur, everything from environmental to engineering, and we would take these type of decisions on a case-by-case basis. The use of mode of conveyance on, rubber wheels might be a way to pilot certain solutions and things like that. That is certainly conceivable. But I'd probably need to get back to you to
Sure.
give you a more comprehensive
So
response.
my last question, apologies to my colleagues. Are the replacement shuttle buses, are they running at the exact same frequency as the streetcar was, or at a higher frequency?
At minimum, matching, given the fact that we're using more than 2 vehicles, better than, still contingent upon a shared guideway and roadway with other traffic.
From crisis comes opportunity. There's an interesting opportunity here to learn about ridership and demand and mode of transit and frequency. So if we're running the buses at a higher frequency than the streetcar was coming through, and we see ridership go up, I think we'd like to know that. So as this time period plays out over the next few months, I hope you're collecting data on ridership and frequency and use, just how it's working, because it may be instructive in how we think, not just about streetcar service downtown, but as we expand streetcar service eastward and westward to the Beltline, et cetera, what's going to make for the best service to our residents.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I do have some additional questions about the shuttle service. One being, I know you said that, service isn't ending. There will still be a vehicle on that route. However, in the meantime, I know these vehicles are still being wrapped, so there still is a gap period. When are we expecting those vehicles to be up and running?
I believe within the next couple of weeks, we expect them to be wrapped. It will look, similar to the concept that you've seen here. There are other things that we're doing to make sure that we communicate appropriately and comprehensively with the marketplace, letting them know that there is still a service solution along the alignment. So we're working hand in hand with our marketing department. There's collateral right now at the stations, at the streetcar stations, that indicate that there is still that continuity of service. There are things that we will do within the what I will call the legacy modes, both within our bus modes and our rail modes, to let riders know that there's still that service, and it's just a different vehicle that will be used.
Is there a stopgap solution between the streetcar being out of commission and before these shuttles come online? Is there a stopgap solution right now?
They're in service, so when
Okay.
we immediately,
They're just not branded?
they're just not branded
Okay.
yet.
Okay, and then a similar question on that, on the shuttles. I know our streetcar stations are designed in such a way to allow for there not being a dip or anything to get onto the streetcar itself. So just from an ADA perspective, I'm curious what sort of limitations are there, considering these vehicles are not necessarily, the stations aren't necessarily designed for these vehicles in mind.
Excellent question. So right now, and we have used, just a quick note, we have used these vehicles when there have been previous outages. So for example, we've had power outages and we couldn't run the streetcar, or we've had, there was recently, I think, a fire at a building. I think a building that was being constructed, and it was really close to our OCS, and we had to suspend the streetcar or the vehicle, but we continued service with these vehicles. So this is something that is plumbed into our operating plan. But you would, I think we stop, we're servicing the station past the elevated platform. So it is level, either preceding or just after the platform, where you have, where someone in a wheelchair or someone with an ADA need can still be serviced safely.
Yeah, and these buses do have lifts on them, so there's no impact to wheelchair users. For example, they're in they have the lifts that come out. So we're servicing just past the platform where it's flat to provide the most level boarding, and then we've trained the operators on how to use these lifts.
Okay, thank you. And then just with regards to the Siemens vehicles that were shipped out to California, I saw that they're not expected to be back in service until March. One of the things that I think about with that is, to Councilman Faruqi's point about potential expansions towards the Beltline. I know we have a broader citywide discussion I was alluded to with our two communications about contemplation of rail on Clifton or Campbellton or in other parts of the city. If those vehicles, say we do get to the point where we expand all these systems and have light rail more abundant across the city, and those vehicles need to be serviced, would those also have to be shipped to California for maintenance? One of the things I think about, at least for our buses and our trains, we maintain those on site. I wonder if having the ability to maintain these vehicles here in the city would shorten that time frame to get these vehicles back into service. So as we look to expand, will we still have to go kind of through the same kind of process to ship it out and wait for those vehicles to come back in? Or would that be baked into that expansion? We would be able to hire the maintenance crews and techs and facilities to get to the point where we can do it in-house?
Well, I think I've mentioned before that there's a lot of learning going on right now, and one of the things that we know and we better appreciate is that we need to build in that resiliency. We know that assets wear and get old, and you have to rehab them and do different things like that. So as much as possible, we would want to be able to do these things locally. And in the case of the wheels and the trucks that we're talking about that we're going to be shipping off to the West Coast, we're going to buy spares. So we're going to purchase spares. So as wheels get worn, yes, we might potentially still need to ship them to another location. However, we would have spares that we could immediately replace them with here locally.
Okay. Because I was wondering if this is more of an economies of scale challenge to where just because we have so few vehicles, it doesn't make sense financially to do something else. But as we grow, just something that I'm thinking about as far as what's best for the taxpayer in terms of what it costs to actually maintain these vehicles.
In some cases, depending on the component, I think you're absolutely correct. It is an economies of scales matter. Some of the work that we have done on our assets is very niche, and it makes sense to ship them off to a vendor that is an expert in that, and they do in fact have the economies of scale.
Okay. And then just my last question, just to comment about the damage to the concrete and the flange along the routes. So, as an avid urban cyclist, I've bit the dust on a streetcar track from time to time myself, but with the damage that has been done because of this maintenance issue, do we expect there to be any sort of concern for if I were to ride my bike down Edgewood or Auburn today or tomorrow, do I need to take any additional precautions as a cyclist to be able to navigate some of these damaged tracks that have driven us to do this repair work?
Yeah, the trackway damage on the concrete it's somewhat superficial. We've brought in Hatch LTK as a consultant to do a full assessment of our trackway. We're looking at other trackway consultants and firms to look at any damage that may have been done by these wheels and to get a program in place to repair that. The rail is more resilient than the wheels. The wheels are designed to wear. That's why they're in such a bad shape. The trackway, based on the testing that we've already done over the last couple of weeks and months, is in relatively good shape. That said, we are doing a full assessment of the trackway and we'll make any necessary repairs.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I yield.
Councilmember Lewis.
And my questions are around, I know you said 1 year ago you found out that we needed to make some of the changes. When did you make the decision to shut down, to suspend services?
The safety hold went into effect on November 30th, so there were discussions around, there were some internal discussions within the operations division around the 29th, if my memory serves correctly, but we formally put the streetcar on a safety hold the afternoon of the 30th.
So you're saying that on the day before, on the 29th, y'all had a conversation, the same day they came in and gave the report to us, they had a conversation and said, hey, we need to close down the streetcar tomorrow?
No, we had a conversation on the 29th where we had discussions about what we had found in those inspections. And there was a back and forth dialogue between different stakeholders within the authority. It was after we did a full assessment, completed those conversations internally, that a decision was made on the 30th, the afternoon of the 30th, to put the vehicles on a safety hold.
That changes a lot of things for me, because I mean, you had to make a decision in one day for safety.
Yes.
And so you then immediately went to the newspaper, but not the mayor, not the council, not the transportation chair or the co-chair at the time period. I think that's the biggest issue we have. And since we got here, the transparency and working together with MARTA. My issue when I'm thinking about other counties, other smaller cities that aren't as strong as Atlanta, I'm just because we're cautious in Atlanta, we're a strong city, and we've given you so much. We're so vested in MARTA. I'm nervous for other cities because if you can just, you had to make that decision in 24 hours. You had to, but to not call the mayor, not call the council chair, the chair, not call the co-chair, not make any communications after that. That's the issue we have, and I know if you can do that to us, you've done it numerous times to us, and 2 times to us this year, in my opinion. One time when I asked you to paint the house yellow with on Campbellton Road, and right here, right now. So I'm just a little cautious and a little nervous with our relationship being a partnership.
Councilman, we hear you, and as I indicated earlier, we'll do better.
When he told me it was about safety and they did it within 24 hours, I was hopeful. I was just trying to see the leeway you had for it. I was wondering, like, did you know 2 weeks before you were going to shut it down on that day? But if you found out in 24 hours and you had to, after having discussions, that was something you had to do. My only grievance is, why don't you call our mayor and say, hey, this is what's going on. Why are we waiting? It's been about 2 or 3 weeks now, and I'm just now finding this out. I would have been Team MARTA for shutting it down for that reason. Why do I have to wait? Why we have to ask you to come down here for this conversation? That's my issue.
Councilmember Overstreet.
Thank you. So most of my questions have really been answered already, because I did have the same types of questions, concerning, why in such bad repair and the timeline for communication to council. And I do accept your apology in that I know that you do have to make decisions that, we're probably not going to always be privy to, but there were several opportunities to just clue us in, or for you all to have a better headway about the fact that we would need to take several months. This will be 4 months off from the actual streetcar, because you did indicate that you knew that there was some wear and tear there, which we should know. Like, there's no reason for us not to know that there's wear and tear there. And so even if that's the communication to us, looking at this, we've got some wear and tear happening, we're not sure what's going to happen next, then we'll be like, fine, let's just make sure we implement the proper channels and processes to make sure that everyone is safe. But, going forward, I do understand that we will have a better communication about not just the streetcar, but things that matter to our residents. That, like, no communication is too small when we're dealing with something like this, because the last thing we want to be as council members is uninformed to citizens that are asking us some very basic questions. What's happening with the streetcar? And I'm like, nothing, everything's fine. Well, no, it's not, because it's closed. So no communication is too small. Piggybacking on on one of the questions that I had, why in such bad repair, but what are the types of timed maintenance adjustments that we're going to implement to avoid this type of scenario in the future? That's a question.
Okay, so as I indicated earlier, there's this resiliency that we're going to, really kind of build in so that we can prevent something like this from happening again. So one of the things is making sure that we have an adequate inventory of spares. So
Got it.
when we talk about Sacramento and sending them to Siemens, we're not necessarily to expedite things. We might send the whole vehicle. That's one of the things that we're looking at. But making sure that we have spare trucks or wheels and different things like that. That's one thing. Making sure that, given the current size of the mode right now, making sure that we have contractual vehicles in place, be it, for embedded track that we were just talking about. We already have a contract for the overhead, the OCS, the contact wires there, but just making sure that we have resiliency in place. And there's some other things that we're going to be working on.
Okay, so then maybe that should be part of our report when MARTA comes in with their quarterly report. Maybe we can, just talk about the streetcar more, or just our maintenance programs for what we're, which should include that. Another thing that during the course of the conversations between the council members and you, I was concerned about is getting the numbers right as far as who's riding and why and what mode of transportation we need for that. Because I immediately thought about the fact that we're expanding the streetcar. And I looked at those projected numbers when you all presented the other week, and those numbers were really high as far as our expectations. And replacing with shuttle buses really that doesn't really go together as far as what we're expecting and what's actually happening. So I almost want to make sure that we're reevaluating where we are with everything, because what we don't want to do is double down on something that's actually not working.
Understood.
So we want to make sure we're doing the right thing by our taxpayers, even if it means it's not our favorite decision. We want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So just want to leave that there so that we can move forward, making sure that we're properly looking at what we're offering as a transportation mode in the right places. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Overstreet. And to her point, I think it's one that's well made, which is the next quarterly update, it would be helpful to have some commentary without getting into technical weeds, but on how you're approaching maintenance for heavy rail buses, light rail, just to kind of, so we can have that conversation. So you can pass that along to the folks back at the central office who help prepare the decks, but that's a topic I think we're interested in. Councilmember Juan.
Thank you, Chairman. One of the problems of being the last to speak is that it gives you time to let things percolate. And as things have been simmering over here, I'm getting more and more uncomfortable with and disappointed in the conversation that's happening here. I wish he were still in here, but I disagree with Councilmember Lewis. I don't believe this was a thing that happened in 24 hours. I mean, Mr. Heck, you said that there have been weekly inspections and that there was conversations amongst multiple stakeholders before making the call. So this wasn't like a tire blowout. Speaking of which, ADOT, I had a tire blowout in a pothole. We'll talk about that later. I'm not willing to give y'all as easy a pass on that. I guess my question is, first of all, this multiple stakeholder discussion group that y'all talk about, is it solely MARTA people, or is there a representative from the Atlanta Department of Transportation in that group?
In that referenced engagement I was talking about, no, it was all internal MARTA stakeholders. It was our safety department that has, certainly oversight of the safe operation of the authority, and members from my division, the operations division.
Doesn't that seem a little incongruous to y'all as well? I mean, granted, y'all operate the system in that you have an MOU with y'all that essentially transferred in it, but it is a significant transportation asset or infrastructure piece in the city of Atlanta, yet we don't have someone in that stakeholder group that makes these like significant decisions on operations. I find that surprising.
Councilman, that is the current state where we would make these decisions as the operator.
How would one go about updating that and making sure that when you say stakeholders, I would think that the city of Atlanta should be considered a stakeholder in something like this, at least.
And I guess what I would say, those are discussions that would need to happen probably with our board and executive leadership.
Okay. The weekly inspections, I guess, what do those include? Is there some sort of report that's generated every week and then, again, circulated or provided to the multiple stakeholder group that's been referenced?
Yeah, so weekly, the track department, MARTA track department walks the entire alignment, and they look for things like wear and tear, and what really raised it, that we had noticed some degradation along the trackway, the chipping. It was superficial. We noticed the wheel wear going back a while, so there were mechanisms and processes in place to address that. The tipping point was really the loose and broken bolts on the switch point. Now, switches are typically where derailments happen, so that raises a lot of flags. Myself, I went out there and observed this with the team. This was prior to our safety hold. We did an internal report. We, again, bounced this off of Hatch LTK. And then our recommendation was to senior leadership that this is the correct and safest action.
And that was discovered in the weekly inspection of November 28th?
Yeah, just prior to that, a few days prior to that, yeah.
The conversation, and y'all also said, again, and more evidence that this wasn't kind of a sudden thing. Granted, not that piece, though, that it was something that was been contemplated for a while, was the fact that y'all had already had a preliminary schedule in mind in terms of when you wanted to take this off. So that, again, this wasn't a surprise to y'all. It just happened to get accelerated. And I think, when was that mental schedule or tentative schedule kind of set? Was that early in 2022? Was it midsummer?
The wheel replacement itself, we had planned. Now, again, as Georgia alluded to, there were supply chain issues. These aren't tires. You can just go to Costco and buy tires. We had to procure these. There was a long lead time. We had always planned on sending the wheels out for replacement starting this month, early January. Now, that mechanism, that contract had been in place for a while. Siemens had been prepared. They're ready for the wheels to get there. We are expediting that as fast as possible, given the advanced degradation.
So you said we had always planned, so I guess when was that, January 2022, we started putting the wheels in place? In motion, I shouldn't say that, but.
So if I may, I'll kind of respond to that 30,000 foot level. So any assets that we have, be it our heavy rail vehicles, our buses, our streetcars, typically there's an OEM.
Gotcha.
Right? Mm-hmm. There's a schedule that says that either at this age or with the number of miles that you might have put on that asset, it is time to do this work. And so that's where we're talking about the OEM schedule said, hey, this is when we need to be replacing wheels or overhauling this or overhauling that. So that's where it starts.
Okay.
And then, and as Daniel alluded to, we put in a contractual vehicle to get that work done, which includes the procurement of certain components and things like that.
I mean, you know, if we do the analogy, we all own cars and we all kind of know that you're supposed to take them in for regular service every now and again, but we're all kind of watching all the different lights and things that are on our dash. So we kind of start getting a sense of, wait a minute, particularly nowadays, you start seeing like your oil percentage start dropping. I don't know. The fact that you said you have weekly inspections, the fact that you have continuous conversations with multiple stakeholders, that the degradation didn't happen overnight, but yet you had all this schedule and you were already starting to plan on it. Again, I feel like Councilmember Lewis has given you all a pass on this because I think I'm just going to just leave my disappointment there. I'm excited that I'm actually going to be on transportation again next year because I'm going to follow this. And the reason being is this notion of, and I don't want to pile on to the wrist slapping, but you know, there are those of us who have been real strong advocates for y'all in the community. I've stuck my neck out for y'all in terms of the Clifton Corridor, and praising y'all and saying that y'all have been very transparent. And then this comes along and it's embarrassing. And so, you know, you say you'll do better. You say you've learned. I would start by looking at that stakeholder group y'all have internally, making sure that we got someone on there too that can then be our, help us stay at the city, our transportation department stay abreast of everything that's going on, and so that we're not shocked by this as well. Yeah, again, that's one of the problems of letting things simmer while everyone else speaks, is that things start boiling up. And I've expressed my concern, and I look forward to the improved relationship for next year. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Juan, and to all my colleagues for their passion and thoughtful questions. I think we received your apology on the lack of notice, but there remain concerns about, I think, the run-up to the decision, the maintenance approach, and what it means for future rail car management, execution, and expansion. So we will continue this conversation in 2023, and I would expect continued hard questions, and to the extent the stakeholder committee can be, I don't know how it's set, if it requires board approval or whatnot, but there should be a City of Atlanta representative on it, or a council representative on it. And we would like to further that conversation with y'all as well. Councilor Lewis.
And to have Councilmember Juan this upset today, because he was a strong advocate when we're talking about the Clifton corridor, because MARTA did become more transparent because of the mistakes that they made on the Campbellton corridor without being transparent. I'm not giving them a pass. I think that safety is the reason for the quick turnaround. Other than that, to me, the transparency that we're getting from MARTA, man, they sent the best person in here to explain it today, because you've been very transparent. You've represented MARTA perfectly. But y'all know this ain't right. And this is Atlanta. You got to treat Atlanta, we special. We want to feel special. So you got to treat Atlanta with a little bit more care than what you're treating us with.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, we will now move to the legislative portion of our agenda. Mr. Johnson, can you lead the way through our ordinances for first read and second read, starting with section H?
Item number 4, 22-01897, an ordinance by Transportation Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to abandon portions of a public street known as Stewart Avenue, consisting of approximately 0.125 acres lying and being in land lot 108 of the 14th District of Fulton County, Georgia, being more specifically described in attached Exhibit A to Candy Coated Entertainment Incorporated, authorizing the mayor's designee to execute a quitclaim deed for such abandoned right-of-way and for other purposes. Section I, ordinance for second reading, item number 5, 22-01892, an ordinance by Councilmember Antonio Lewis to allow a sidewalk waiver payment in the amount of blank to be deposited into the District 12 Sidewalk Trust Fund for SD 21-7, 130 Hilltop Drive, and for other purposes, and the department requests that this item be held.
Motion to hold by Juan, second by Farokhi. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. Will everyone please vote? The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is held. This takes us to Section J, Resolutions. Item number 622R4786, a resolution by council members Liliana Bakhtiari and Jason H. Winston authorizing the mayor's designee on behalf of the Atlanta Department of Transportation to apply for and accept local maintenance improvement grant funding from the Georgia Department of Transportation in an amount not to exceed $250,000.00 for the reconfiguration of Bill Kennedy Way between the Atlanta Beltline East Side Trail and Atlanta Beltline South Side Trail and for other purposes.
Smith.
Good morning, council members. Alan Smith, Interim Deputy Commissioner, ATL DOT, TIM Division. This legislation just allows us to apply for and accept funds from GDOT in the amount of $250,000 on the behalf of the Atlanta Beltline for the reconfiguration improvements of Bill Kennedy Way between the East Side Trail and South Side Trail.
All right, motion to approve? Second. Second by Dozier. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable. Item number 7, 22R4787, a resolution by Councilmember Andrea L. Boone requesting the Commissioner of the Atlanta Department of Transportation to conduct a traffic study on LeConte Highway Southwest to determine the need for any safety improvements such as traffic calming devices, reduced speeds, or stop signs, and for other purposes.
Motion to approve by Overstreet, second by Juan. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable. Item number 8, 22R4789, a resolution by Councilmember Jason Dozier requesting the mayor or his designee to reduce the speed limit on Oakland Drive Southwest from 35 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour and for other purposes. And Mr. Chair, this item needs to be amended. The amendment changes in the second be it further resolved clause from Department of Public Works to Atlanta Department of Transportation.
Motion to amend by Dozier, second by Faroki. Please open the vote on the motion to amend.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item has been amended.
Councilmember Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I move to approve as amended, I just want to say that Oakland Drive has been a point of concern for many members of our Oakland City community for a long time. We've had several meetings with the Atlanta Department of Transportation team about identifying opportunities to lower speeds on this route. And so recognizing that there is still more to be done, this is just the first of many steps to make Oakland Drive a safer street. We have a major city park with Reverend James Morris Park. We have Finch Elementary School on this corridor. Our work is cut out for us, but I'm glad to be moving in this direction. So I want to move on approval, but just want the people to know, or move as amended, but just want the people in the Oakland City community to know this is the first of many steps to make Oakland Drive a safer street for all.
Thank you. So we have a motion to approve as amended by Councilmember Dozier, a second by Faroki. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable as amended. Item number 9, 22R4790, a resolution by Councilmember Jason Dozier requesting the mayor's designee to prohibit parking on Formwalt Street Southwest from Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard to Glen Street Southwest and for other purposes.
Councilmember Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On this item, just in rereading the legislation that we introduced last week, we recognize that it may not be clear what we're looking to accomplish with this particular paper. The language says that we want to prohibit parking on Formwalt Street from Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard to Glen Street. We're actually only looking to prohibit parking on one side of the street, specifically the west side of the street. And so I want to move to amend to add that clarifying language to both the caption and to the resolve clause.
Motion to amend as stated by Councilmember Dozier, a second by Juan. Please open the vote on the motion to amend.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item has been amended.
Move to approve as amended.
Motion to approve is amended by Dozier, second by Faroki. Please open the vote on the motion to approve as amended.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable as amended. Item number 10, 22R4792, a resolution by council members Amir Faroki, Alex Wan, and Matt Westmoreland authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a project framework agreement with the Georgia Department of Transportation and a project management agreement with the Atlanta Downtown Improvement District for the I-85, I-75 capping study, the Stitch, to authorize the mayor or his designee to execute all agreements related to the Stitch and for other purposes.
Commissioner.
Good morning. Good morning. First of all, I want Interim Commissioner Marsha Anderson Bomar, Atlanta DOT. First, I want to take the opportunity to thank you all for the work we've had the chance to do together. As you know, this will be my last meeting as the interim commissioner. New Commissioner Cavanis will join you as of January the 3rd. I'm also excited to let you know that my term has been extended to support the transition. Thank you. And thank you. I appreciate that so much. And we'll see how long that is extended, but I'm very excited to be able to stay on board and help make sure that some of the important initiatives continue to be addressed. To this matter, the city has supported the ADID in their application for the planning funding for the Stitch, the federal funding. We do have an agreement in place with ADID, which allows us to do these project management agreements. They are not able to be a direct recipient of the federal funds. So the funds will come to us, and then we will enter into an agreement to provide those funds to ADID. And of course, we will play a small role in oversight of the expenditure of those funds as the project goes forward.
Thank you. I'll move to approve. Second by Juan. Please open the vote. While we're voting, thank you for your service to the city. You've maintained continuity and I think communication with all of us, which is deeply, deeply appreciated as we navigate a new bond package and TSPOS 2.0 and figuring out prioritization. And I know you've been very accessible to each of us, so thank you.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable. Mr. Chair, can we take items number 11, 13 together as a block?
Please do.
These are for the installation of traffic calming devices. And 14. Item number 11, 22R4793, a resolution by Councilmember Dustin Hillis requesting the mayor or his designee to install traffic calming devices on Woodmere Drive Northwest between Donald Lee Hollowell Parkway Northwest and Eleanor Terrace Northwest and for other purposes. Item number 13, 22R4796, a resolution by Councilmember Antonio Lewis requesting the mayor or his designee to install traffic calming devices on Macedonia Road Southeast from Ruby Harper Boulevard Southeast to Jonesboro Road Southeast and for other purposes. Item number 14, 22R4799, a resolution by Councilmember Mary Noel requesting the mayor or his designee to install traffic calming devices on Ridgewood Road Northwest between Paces Ferry Road Northwest and Nancy Creek Road Northwest and for other purposes.
Move to approve. Councilmember Juan, I apologize. The floor is yours.
I'm supportive of this, but I just want to confirm that these are unfunded installations at this point, or are they funded?
Good morning again, council members. Alan Smith, Interim Deputy Commissioner, ATL DOT, TIM Division. I always say my name because sometimes I forget. Yes, you are correct, Councilmember Wine. At this point, they are unfunded.
Thank you.
And a reminder to the extent that, not for you, but to colleagues, to the extent you want to use your TSPOS dollars for speed tables and things like this, you can fund them. Mr. Johnson.
The vote is open. Will everyone please vote? The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. These items are favorable. This takes us to item number 12, 22R4795, a resolution by Councilmember Antonio Lewis requesting the mayor or his designee to install traffic calming devices on Conley Road from Thurman Road Southeast to Old Conley Road Southeast and for other purposes. And the department requests that this item be held.
Motion to hold.
Motion to hold by Lewis, second by Faroki. Please open the vote on the motion to hold.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is held in committee. This takes us to item number 15, 22R4801, a resolution by council members Matt Westmoreland, Jason Dozier, Liliana Bakhtiari, Dustin Hillis, Jason Winston, Amir Faroki, and Michael Julian Bond, authorizing the creation of a study group to review national best practices and provide recommendations for the creation of an e-bicycle rebate program for the city of Atlanta and for other purposes. And Mr. Chair, this item needs to be substituted. The substitute adds language that the city will be in compliance with the gratuities clause of the state constitution. Also adds the Atlanta Regional Commission executive director as a member of the study group.
Do we need to bring the substitute forward or no?
It does not change the caption.
All right. Councilor Juan has moved to amend as substituted, or however he worded it.
Excuse me, bring forth the substitute. Excuse me.
Second by Lewis. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. The substitute is before you.
Motion to approve as amended by Juan, second by Lewis. Please open the vote.
It will be approved as substitute, Mr. Chair. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable on substitute. Mr. Chair, if there is no objection from the committee, can we take items number 16 and 17 together as a block?
Please do.
These are for the installation of all-way stops. Item number 16, 22R4802, a resolution by Councilmember Jason Winston requesting the mayor as designee to make the intersection of Cherokee Avenue Southeast at Bryan Street Southeast an all-way stop control intersection, to request the Atlanta Department of Transportation to install stop signs at the intersection and for other purposes. Item number 17, 22R4803, a resolution by Councilmember Jason Winston requesting the mayor or his designee to make the intersection of Hamilton Avenue Southeast and Morley Avenue Southeast an all-way stop control intersection, to request the Atlanta Department of Transportation to install stop signs at the intersection and for other purposes.
Motion to approve, second by Dozier. Please open the vote on these papers.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable. Item number 18, 22R4827, a resolution by Transportation Committee adopting the strategic delivery plan for the Moving Atlanta Forward 2022 infrastructure program on behalf of the Atlanta Department of Transportation and for other purposes.
Commissioner.
Yes, Marsha Anderson Beaumar, Interim Commissioner, Atlanta DOT. I just want to thank everybody. I know at the last meeting we had the chance to present the draft. We've updated it with the changes that were requested either by the bond folks in the Treasurer's Department or by the council members. It is still a living document. You will still have opportunities to work with us if there are other updates that need to happen, but we would appreciate your adoption of the document as it stands now. Thank you.
Perfect.
Move approval on condition because I have something that I am delivering to you. Okay, but I'll get it to you before our January 3rd meeting. I've already drafted it. Thanks.
So I'm not sure we need it on condition unless it's a condition that it will adjust the.
The adjustments can be made.
Okay. But you're noted that Councilmember Overstreet is coming with some additional information for you to incorporate. Yeah. Motion by Overstreet, second by Dozier. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable on condition. Item number 19, 22R4828, a resolution by Transportation Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the city of Atlanta to execute a temporary right-of-way agreement with CSX Transportation Incorporated for paving activities adjacent to the CSX Railroad crossing at Lennox Road, and to authorize the Chief Financial Officer to remit payment to CSX Transportation Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $6,930.00 on behalf of the Atlanta Department of Transportation. All calls will be paid from account numbers listed herein and for other purposes. And Mr. Chair, this item needs to be substituted. The substitute adds the agreement to the legislation.
Do you want to hear from ATL DOT? Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Ibrahim Abu Saud. I am the interim deputy commissioner for Atlanta DOT capital projects.
Do we have a substitute to bring forward, or we needed to?
We need a
motion to bring forward the substitute by Councilmember Juan, second by Faruqi.
The vote is open.
The connector, maybe?
Will everyone please vote? The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. The substitute is before you.
Mr. Abu Said, do you mind speaking to this legislation as to where is this railroad crossing? Because it's not-
Yeah, this is to execute a temporary right of entry for paving activities, and the location it's right the railroad at Boulevard, right where Boulevard goes under the CSX.
Okay, so the
Yeah,
and staff comments the location is incorrect.
correct.
Okay,
Yeah, so
okay, thank you.
yeah.
Motion to approve on substitute by Juan, second by Lewis. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable on substitute. Item number 2022R4829, a resolution by Transportation Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to execute an encroachment agreement with 95 Centennial Owner LLC and 250 MLK Jr. Owner LLC for the purpose of installing permanent underground sharing and tiebacks into portions of Mitchell Street and Elliott Street rights-of-ways and for other purposes.
Councilmember Dozier, before we turn to Mr. Smith.
Actually, I'll let you speak before I ask.
Okay. Again, good morning. Alan Smith, Interim Deputy Commissioner, ATL DOT, TIM Division. So this legislation will allow the necessary excavation and foundation work needed for the Centennial Yards development. This development will include a 291 key hotel above 4,000 square feet of retail, restaurant space, and residential tower with 304 units over a street residential and retail parking. The construction timeline anticipates an early January 2023 start date. The consideration of this paper will provide adequate time to finalize an encroachment agreement prior to the desired start date.
Councilor Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So whenever I see any projects involving, shoring and viaducts, anything like that in this area, the thing that pops in my mind is the project at MLK and Ted Turner, and whether this has any implication on the delivery of that project. And I recognize, Mitchell and Elliott Street may or may not be related, but if you could just talk through kind of the larger, what's happening in that area, because there's been active construction there for, I feel like, 6 or 7 years now. And with Centennial Yards moving forward, with South Downtown moving forward, I just want to get a sense of when all of this is going to start coming together in a way that we'll be able to walk down that street.
Sure. So, Councilmember Dozier, we'll be more than happy to give you the the nitty-gritty details, but at a very high level. All of the projects that, happen within the city of Atlanta, on our side, what we do is we work collaboratively with all of our partners to make sure that projects don't conflict with other ones that are in, a nearby radius or impact area. So with this project, it has been looked at, and we feel comfortable that with it moving forward, it won't impact any other projects in the area in a negative way. I'll be more than happy to get with the interim deputy commissioner and the capital projects team just to make sure that we have that in a memo form, just to spell out any details, at a more granular level.
Second.
Motion approved by Juan, second by Dozier. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable. Item number 2122R4830, a resolution by Transportation Committee authorizing the mayor or his designee on behalf of the Department of Transportation to issue a work order under IFBC 1210241, installation of traffic calming measures with Georgia Paving Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $2,226,920.0 for the installation of traffic calming measures with all contracted work to be charged to and paid from various fund, department, organization, and account numbers listed herein and for other purposes.
Mr. Smith.
Okay, good morning again. Sorry I sat down. I thought I was finished.
We're 12 months in, man. You got to learn this lesson. I told you guys sit in the front row. You keep sitting in the back and get up.
Right. Alan Smith, Interim Deputy Commissioner, ATL DOT, TIM Division. This legislation allows us to issue a work order in the amount of $2,226,920 to the Georgia Paving for the installation of traffic calming devices for the renewed contract. We're slated to begin installation spring next year, so around March, once the weather breaks.
Thank you. Councilmember Juan.
Probably know my question is coming. I mean, do we have a specific list of the ones that are going to get installed using this contract?
Yes.
And can
yes.
we? All right. I'm going to make a motion to approve on condition. Sorry to have you report that we could receive that list and get it attached or substitute with the attached list.
I will second that motion. Councilmember Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a real quick question, and sorry if I'm full of questions today. This is my last Transportation Committee meeting, so I'm getting them all out today. I believe this list also includes the projects that our office is funding through our renewed discretionary fund. Since we worked with ATL DOT to finalize our list a couple months ago, we've added some additional streets. And this is okay. We're not looking to amend this list because I know y'all are trying to go through procurement, but what we expect the additional streets that we're trying to find to be added into a future procurement or future work order, and what is the timeline for what we can expect? Is that a FY 2024 type situation, or when could we look at potential delivery for that?
Yeah, sure, Councilmember Dozier. So any new additions, we would look to have those slated for FY 24. At this time, the list that we have teed up that we're going to start in March, we anticipate finishing that around end of summer, early fall. And during that time, we'll have conversations with the streets that you want to add and add funding for, and we'll be more than happy to help add funding to add those to the next batch.
So we have a motion to approve on condition by Juan, a second by Faroki. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. Vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable on condition. This takes us to items held. We have one. Item number 30-22-01604, an ordinance by Councilmember Alex Juan, authorizing the mayor's designee to make the intersections of Lennox Road Northeast and Wildwood Road Northeast an always stop control intersection, to authorize the Atlanta Department of Transportation to install stop signs at the intersection and for other purposes, and the sponsor requests that this item be filed.
Motion to file by Juan, second by Overstreet. Please open the vote on the motion to file.
The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays. This item is filed. We have one walk-in today.
That's from DOT.
Elms number 31640. a resolution by Transportation Committee to correct Resolution 22R 4327 adopted by the Atlanta City Council on September 19th, 2022, and approved per City Charter Section 2-403 on September 28th, 2022, by inserting the project number IFBC 1200609 for FC 9622-A Transportation and Infrastructure Construction Services with Astra Group LLC for the Inman Park Intersection Improvement Project, all other parts of the legislation to remain unchanged and for other purposes.
Mr. Abu Saud.
Ibrahim Abu Saud, Atlanta DOT, Interim Commissioner of Capital Projects. Yeah, this resolution is just to correct and add a project number to the resolution number 22R 4327. This is requested by the Department of Law, and when that request comes, we just do what they tell us.
Yeah. Motion approved by Juan, second by Faroki. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Yeah, your honesty is appreciated.
Yeah.
Will everyone please vote? The vote is closed. 5 yeas, 0 nays, is items favorable.
Terrific. Before we close out, Commissioner, do you mind, Commissioner Bomar Anderson, do you mind coming up to the front? I have a question. This is about the downtown repaving that's currently ongoing. Are the streets that have been paved to date, are they finished or are they still in progress? And I ask that because many of the utility covers are not at grade. There's the lanes are not flush with each other. Yeah.
Most of the streets are in the second step of the process where they've put some have been milled, some have been milled and then have binder coat. I believe Washington is the only one that has the final coat on it. So those differences, and there's still a little bit of work to be done there at the corner. There's still a utility that needs to be raised, but they're all a work in progress.
Thank you. Appreciate that. This brings us to the end of our 2022 Transportation Committee. Councilor Dozier.
I'll be quick. I just want to thank you, Mr. Chair, and you, Mr. Vice Chair, for your leadership this year. I hate that I won't be joining y'all next year for Transportation Committee, but I promise you I will continue to be obnoxious about transportation-related issues and items in the city. So
you are always welcome. I want to thank the committee for their participation and thoughtfulness and preparation for each meeting. We've had some really good conversations, and those will continue into 2023. I believe Councilmember Lewis and Councilor Overstreet will continue on, and Juan will continue on the committee. We'll be losing Councilmembers Dozier, Westmoreland. Councilor Waits will also still be on the committee. So we'll have a good bit of continuity and looking forward to a really great group together next year. So I thank you to Mr. Johnson and all the council staff for helping these meetings run smoothly. Y'all are you're kind of you make the wheels turn in ways that make our jobs much, much easier. So a big thank you to each of y'all. To everyone who shows up to these meetings and watches, thank you for being part of our civic engagement, or if you're assigned to come here by your department, thank you for being here. Councilmember Lewis. Oh, you did? Okay. Well, all that said, happy holidays. We are adjourned.
Oh my gosh, we made it.